For more information about EECMS, please feel free to visit our website at www.eecms.co.za. Thank you for attending. Please welcome your host.
It's Peter from EECMS, the abbreviation for Employment Equity Compliance and Management Services. Just for introduction purposes, I've been with the company for just about 16 years now. Employment equity is our only forte. That's the only thing we specialize in. We have been through more than 140 DG reviews in the past 2.5 years, give or take, colleagues, where all our clients have passed without being referred to the Labour Court and or received penalties. Okay, so today's session, the purpose of this session is to provide you information on the legislation, of course, as well as the Amendment Act. Colleagues, if you're not aware of it, the Employment Equity Act was amended. It was signed off the 12th of November last year, and it became effective on the 1st of January 2025. So as part of this session, we're going to explain a couple of things because of the fact that the regulations have not been gazetted as of yet. I will elaborate in this session on what we believe might happen in terms of timelines and time frames. When do we think the administrative regulations will be out? I will elaborate on that, as well as the draft sectoral numerical targets. I'm sure there's a lot of questions on those targets, what to expect. Now, colleagues, when we're going to provide you information, we will provide information based on our practical experience, as well as what we have heard from the high-level stakeholders within the department, referring to the Directorate of the Department of Employment and Labour, as well as our sessions and meetings with the Commissioner for Employment Equity. Okay, so we're going to provide you with hands-on information as we proceed. Yes, we're going to talk on the Employment Equity Act as well, because I want the team and the audience to also understand the current legislation, as well as the amendment, as well as what to expect regarding the regulations yet to be gazetted. I'm going to kill the camera on my side. Barry, if you can maybe just an introduction on your side, and then we will hand it over to Caserica, and then to Sharon, and then to Hermias from Specon, and then I will start the presentation. Thank you, Barry. Over to you.
Okay, thank you for that, Peter. Good morning, everyone. My name is Barry Schenker, also from EECMS. I'm one of the senior employment equity consultants with the company. Been with the company just about 6 years now, and as Peter mentioned, our only forte is employment equity compliance and assisting companies to be compliant with the legislation. Nice to meet everybody.
Thank you.
Thanks, Peter. Good morning, everyone. My name is Caserica Naidu, also a employment equity consultant at EECMS. Looking forward to our webinar today, and hopefully everyone gets the answers, rather clarity on a few questions they would have had from the new amendment. Thank you.
Thank you, Cass. Sharon, over to you, Sharon.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Sharon Kruger. I'm also an EE consultant for EECMS, working for ±3 years. It is lovely to meet everyone, and I truly hope that you will get the answers or ask many questions so that you can understand the Amendment Employment Equity Act. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Sharon. Hermias, over to you.
Thank you so much, Peter. My name is Hermias Nieuwoud. I work with Specon, and we specialize in learnership solutions, and today we will particularly look at how that links in with your employment equity strategies.
Thank you very much for that, Hermias and team. Colleagues, as mentioned, purpose of this session is from information and training session on the Employment Equity Act 55 of 1998. It's not something new. It's been in existence for just about 26, 27 years, give or take. Then we will also, of course, touch base and explain the amendments. I'm also going to touch on the regulations. However, please bear in mind, as at today, the 13th of March 2025, the regulations are only in draft format and have not been gazetted as of yet. but I want to explain what we have seen out of the draft, just to inform you on the way forward up to a point where we have those regulations gazetted. Okay, the following sections came into operation on the 1st of January this year. Section 1, definitions. 15A, that is now included regarding affirmative action measures and also touching on the sectoral numerical targets. Section 16, your committee and now unions that will need to be involved for specific companies. I will elaborate on that in a bit. Section 20, 21, 27, etc. All of these sections are the relevant sections that we will explain in this session. One of the major changes that came into operation on the 1st of January this year is the definition of designated employer that was amended. How was it amended? By repealing Schedule 4. Colleague, Schedule 4 refers to the annual turnover thresholds within your industry. So in other words, prior 1 January 2025, there were 11 industries and or sectors from agricultural to manufacturing, construction, wholesale, retail, etc. Currently, there are 18 sectors as per the amendment. But that being said, prior 1 January, you had industry thresholds. So when you employed less than 50 people, you had to identify the industry you operate in, as well as your annual turnover. And if your annual turnover in the company is above that industry turnover threshold, then you were also deemed a designated employer that had to comply by means of an analysis, an employment equity plan, quarterly meetings, having a committee, submitting relevant reports, etc. Whereas now, employing less than 50 people, you are deemed a non-designated employer. That will have a huge impact on a business throughout South Africa, employing less than 50 people. There's a couple of rules, of course. If you employ less than 50 people and you are not owned by government, in other words, you're not a state-owned entity, or you're not a municipality, you're not a provincial legislature, you're not an Eskom, South African Airways, etc., etc., you are employing less than 50, you are not a state-owned entity, and you're not bound by collective agreement by means of the trade union and bargaining council, then you are deemed non-designated. Meaning, going forward, you don't need to have an employment equity committee anymore. You don't need to have quarterly meetings. You don't need to submit your EA2 and 4 reports to the department, etc. You still need to comply with certain things depending on whether you are in need of a BE certificate and or whether you maybe deal with government. Then you'll opt in for Section 16B certificate, and I will give you those rules in a bit, and I will then explain what the meaning would be or is of Section 16B certificate, which is not regulated and gazetted as of yet, but we have a very clear understanding of what to expect. Bottom line is the following. Major change. You employ 49 people or less. You are not owned by government. Your company not owned by government and not bound by a collective agreement. You are non-designated. Designated employers will be companies employing 50 or more, and all companies owned by government and or bound by a collective agreement through the bargaining council. A definition of the National Minimum Wage Commission will now be introduced. Okay, whereas currently you used to submit your EA4 document detailing remuneration, and a National Minimum Wage Commission will now be introduced, whereas designated employers will need to also submit all your employees' remuneration, total remuneration, for the department to confirm that you're actually paying minimum wage or more. Colleagues, any company not paying minimum wage will by default be non-compliant. There are repercussions in terms of penalties, in terms of loss of BEE points, and so forth. I will also explain in more detail as we go along. People with disabilities includes people who have long-term or recurring physical, mental, and now will also include intellectual or sensory impairment, which in interaction with various barriers may substantially limit the prospects of entry into or advancement in employment. And also, in addition, now persons with disabilities has a corresponding meaning as people with disabilities. So, main thing here, intellectual or sensory impairments, colleagues, what would happen? What's going to happen, we believe, is that the EA1 document referring to the declaration of your employee requesting if you are disabled, you need to tick the employee and also explain what the person's disability is. So we do believe the EA1 will be amended to include intellectual or sensory impairment. How do we define intellectual and or sensory impairment? We do not know as of yet, colleagues. We will await the regulations. Hopefully the regulations will elaborate on that. So just to give you an overview of what the difference is, you have the Employment Equity Act, which was amended. We know that. It's done and dusted. There are two sets of regulations to follow. The one will be the administrative regulations in determining the interpretation of the Act, showing the changes in the relevant forms. In terms of the EA1, the EA2 will also be amended. Your employment equity plan, I believe there will be a new employment equity plan template, etc. That's the main purpose of the administrative regulations, which we do not have as of yet. We believe that will be gazetted by end of March. We talk about 2.5 weeks from today. And then there will be a second set of regulations, which will be the sectoral numerical targets. And we believe those targets will be gazetted on or before the 30th of April 2025. Please, if we do not stick with those timelines, this is hearsay from the relevant stakeholders, colleagues. But of course, we do not have crystal balls, so we cannot give you exact timelines. But we hope that the department will remain with the imposed deadlines or proposed deadlines. Definition of sector will be included, EA17. In other words, I had mentioned there are additional sectors, currently 18. Let's just backtrack a little bit. Purpose of the Employment Equity Act. Colleagues, it's to achieve equity in the workplace by promoting equal opportunity and fair treatment in employment through the elimination of unfair discrimination. Also to implement affirmative action measures to redress the disadvantages of employment in of designated groups. Colleagues, let's quickly have a look and talk about the following. Achieve equity in the workplace. Number one, what is the workplace? If you employ 100 people from top management to unskilled, also including your temporary staff members, that would be your workplace. 100 employees, all of the people on your payroll. Achieving equity in the workplace refers to the current EAP targets, economically active population. There are targets set by government. They were amended 2 weeks ago. There were new targets released. We're going to show you what those targets are. It's not in the presentation. You are more than welcome to maybe grab your phone and you will be able to take a photo of those targets when we share the online portal that we are currently utilizing. Based on those EAP targets, and when we talk about EAP, I'm going to explain the EAP analysis in more detail in a bit, as well as the abbreviation, as well as how those targets are being determined. And the department likes to see that companies try their best to achieve equity, referring to the targets within your workplace by promoting equal opportunity and fair treatment. Designated groups include all your African males and females, colored males and females, Indian males and females. Colleagues, white females are included, and as per the amendment, it was confirmed, and it stands as at today, that white females remain being a designated group for employment equity purposes. Okay, different story regarding employment, regarding BEE, regarding and obtaining to employment equity, white females are included, as well as all disabled staff. Now, just as a matter of interest, the unofficial target for disabled staff in your company currently is 2% of your headcount. So the department would like to see that you as a designated employer try your best to employ one disabled person out of every 50 employees. So what do you need to do, colleagues? You go and you see if you employ 1,000 people, your unofficial target equals 2% equals 20 disabled staff members. It can be disabled staff members by means of a training authority, by means of learners. They don't need to be involved in your day-to-day operations necessarily. You maybe pay a stipend through an external party. You place that person under the stipend as part of your employees under, let's say, payroll. And most probably those employees are either semi-skilled or unskilled learners and or internships. Being disabled, unofficial target 2%. The proposed target for the majority of the industries, and I'm now referring to the 18 industries and or sectors. The majority of those sectors, the proposed target equals 3%. Now, colleagues, whereas in the past, if you didn't achieve the the disabled target of 2%, the department could say there's an inspection. We'd like you to try your best and please come up with a new plan and show that you are anticipating to maybe recruit disabled staff. Whereas, per the amendment, if you do not achieve the disabled target, you will be non-compliant. You will not receive a certificate and you can be referred for a 1.5 million rand penalty. You will forfeit your BEE points under management and control due to the fact that you are non-compliant with employment equity, except if you provide a justifiable reason that will be acknowledged and or accepted by a Department of Employment and Labour inspector. Colleagues, that is why we invited SPECON to have a couple of minutes discussion pertaining to what they have to offer. And if you need any further or more information on possible disabled, not only disabled, but other learnerships, you're more than welcome to send me an email. I will ask Cash to put my email address also in the chat box, but I'm sure you have it based on our previous communication. I want to hand over to Hermias just so that he can basically explain, because number one, we know the anticipated target will be more or less in the vicinity of 3%. Now you employ 100 employees, you need 3 disabled or you're non-compliant if you do not have a justifiable reason. So you need to start to plan now for the way forward. When we have the final sectoral targets, at least you chew already on the fact that disabled will become a mandatory for your compliancy. And at least now, Hermias can provide you with some information as to what other benefits there are over and on top of EE compliancy pertaining to the disabled. Hermias, I'm going to hand over to you. More than welcome, and I will proceed after you're done. Thank you, Hermias.
Thank you, Peter, for that introduction. While I'm sharing my slides, I wanted to say, welcome on. I know it's a daunting experience every time we see changes in legislation and there's some uncertainties and you speak with different people and you get different advice and everyone's sort of figuring it out. Fortunately, we've been in the learnership space for many years, and we found a very special niche in the disabled side. So although we cater for most of the learnership requirements that you might need, we do have a particular focus on disabled learners. And I think that comes from seeing the impact it has, starting off with a few disabled learners and then just really seeing how those individuals were able to overcome some of the challenges they had and develop and, ultimately becoming really valuable assets in the organization. It's quite something special to see. So that's why we're really passionate about disabled learnerships above and beyond any of the legislative and practical and business benefits that it has. So I just want to take you through a little bit of who we are and what we do. So today we'll chat about the value of learnerships, specifically to society as a whole and the individual. I know that's the soft side, and most of the decisions are made financially, but it's good to know and just really from our experience to see the difference and impact that it makes in individuals' lives. Then go into the organizational benefits, and then what we have in terms of a recruitment and absorption model that could offer more permanent solutions as opposed to recycling learnerships in your organization. Okay, so we've been offering training solutions since 2013. Pride ourselves in being able to offer very customized training solutions, and we have done training beyond the borders of this country, and we have a strong connection with organizations outside of South Africa as well. So we're really branching out in that respect, particularly from a software perspective. We offer top tier, and this is really what has made the name for our organization, is the top tier learnership solutions that we offer. And we also offer really exciting and innovative skills development programs with that. So our vision is to become the leader in upskilling individuals and ensuring that learning and development is accessible to everyone. So I had a talk earlier this week where the focus was on what is our currency, what do we get from what we do apart from money. We want to see that we create opportunities. The more opportunities we create, the more successful we are. And that takes us to, why does this matter? Why does it matter that we employ disabled people and give learning opportunities to disabled people? So we try to empower disabled individuals by providing skills and qualifications to them. I don't really like the word empower, because empower sounds like if it's not for us, they can't do anything. But there's a lot of potential that's wrapped up in every individual, particularly disabled individuals. So our job is to, number one, give them an opportunity to learn, and that counts for all organizations in South Africa, is giving them an opportunity to show what they're made of. And then number two, to give them hope that they are able to do something with their lives and they are able to succeed and earn an income for their families and have relatively normal lives. So that's why that's important. We want to create inclusive opportunities for employment and personal growth. We want to help increase workforce diversity and fostering an inclusive culture in the workplace. Now, ultimately, that aligns completely with the employment equity goals, and that's where the employing disabled learners on a learnership really helps a lot. Then, just in terms of the individual, what we've seen that once a disabled learner has successfully completed a learnership, it tremendously increases their prospects for employment. The reason for that is this legislation like employment equity, a lot of pressure on organizations to appoint disabled people. Now, once they have shown the ability to complete a learnership, it gives a lot of confidence to employers to take on these employees into their organizations, and they become very sought after to employ. So by doing one learnership for one disabled individual really greatly increases their ability to become employed in the future. And we're helping people become self-sufficient. So if there's used to be one income into a family, we can now have two incomes into a family, and the healthcare and medical bills is no longer the problem of everyone around you, but you can get sort of that independence back by helping yourself and becoming independent. And we also see an incredible boost in self-confidence and social inclusion, and people starting to feel like they belong. And that's one of the wonderful things when I walk into our offices. Sometimes forget that a lot of our employees are deaf, and we've got signs all over the offices that shows you how to say thank you and how to say hello and how to start using sign languages. And you can really see how that's uplifted the culture in the organization, and you truly become friends with people you never thought you'd be able to communicate with. And that's an incredible feeling and something that I think any organization can benefit from. So just in terms of how it will impact your business and assist your business from a financial perspective and an opportunity perspective, the first and biggest benefit that you'll get financially is through 12H tax incentives. Now, typical incentive for an able-bodied individual is 40,000 Rand that can be deducted from your taxable income for the first year of the learnership, and then another 40,000 Rand upon completion. With a disabled learner, if you do a disabled learnership, this goes up to 60,000 Rand per year and another 60,000 Rand on completion. Okay, so if you want to have a conversation about 12H, it's a little bit more complex. It'll be a webinar in itself to go through all of that. But ultimately what it means is the government offers an incentive. That incentive value can be deducted from your taxable income, reducing the amount of tax that you need to pay to the government. A lot of our costing, a lot of our processes and quotations have been built around these 12H tax benefits to make sure that when you invest into learnerships, it ultimately costs very, very little to run because SARS pays for most of it. Then you've got the ETI, or the employment tax incentives, which is another incentive for hiring young individuals who are eligible for ETI and encouraging business to employ individuals from historically disadvantaged groups. The ETI benefits contribute to a reduced payroll cost while boosting the company's social responsibility credentials. So ETI is definitely something that you can utilize to comply with the targets that are set by sectors, especially from a disabled point of view, and doing that with learnerships helps it even further because it's a huge reduction in costs. Then we look at your BEE and employment equity advantages. From a BEE perspective, learnerships is the single element that is the easiest to do in order to get points. So your Rand per point ratio is absolutely the best by doing learnerships, and it helps you. So learnership for disabled individuals contributes significantly to BEE and contributes to employment equity targets and improves your organization's social impact footprint. Okay, so Peter has already taken us through a little bit of how it impacts employment equity. I'm sure he'll elaborate even further, but just to add on that, a thought that occurred to me just before the session is there's also a imperative on organizations to train individuals in your organization for succession into higher occupational levels from an employment equity perspective. So training designated individuals for future leadership roles. We also have incredible solutions in that respect from a software perspective with an online training platform that is also included in the learnerships that we offer. So if you do learnerships through us, you get access to an online training platform as a value add, and you can then start training your designated individuals in your organization, keep those records, and that it will make the whole process a lot easier. Okay, so training for BEE is always a win-win. It doesn't only help with your BEE and your employment equity requirements, but it also aligns your company with social justice initiatives. And from what we've seen is where companies do this successfully, it generally enhances their reputation as a champion in their industry, and it really opens up a lot more opportunities in the market when people look at it from that perspective. All right, Peter, I said I wasn't going to be long, so just a final thought from our side in terms of learnership recruitment and delivery. So from a recruitment perspective, our learnerships recruitment model ensures a seamless process for businesses to engage with disabled learners. We offer personalized support to help businesses integrate these learners into their workforce. And that all works together with the software that I mentioned earlier to give you very personalized development plans. Where you see there's an issue with conflict management, we'll assist with that. Where you see there's a little problem with the way an individual types an email, we've got a course for that. So small little things where we can guide people and help shape them for the business environment. We've got all the tools for that. And then in terms of our absorption model, it's something that if you've got a particular need for that, you can talk to us about. So post-learnership employment absorption model ensures a smooth transition for learners into full-time positions. This provides businesses with the opportunity to earn additional BEE points, enhancing their scorecard and contributing to long-term success. Right, so you get so much more value out of your learnership spend when you do absorption, and we've got some great models to try and assist that. Okay, so why would you choose us? We've got a really good track record in delivering customized training solutions. We really have strong partnerships. That's why we work with EECMS as much as we do. And we have so many people that we share minds with in order to ensure that we're successful. Okay, and the fact that we are able to deliver a very tailored approach is something that sets us apart quite significantly. So whatever your need is, we will make a plan to make it happen for you. That's us. How you get hold of us, I think in this scenario, it would be best to work with Peter. You guys know him, you trust him. So set up a meeting in conversation with Peter. He'll invite us into the session. We can have a conversation from there. Thank you so much, Peter, for your time and for allowing me to share this. And all the best with the rest of the conversation.
Spekon, thank you very much. Hermias, I did include your cell phone number there. Is that okay with you?
100%, yes.
Perfect. Colleagues, and if you need any further information, I will also send certain documents that we did receive from Spekon. We have been working closely for many years. The reason for that is that Spekon is assisting our clients with not only disabled learners, but with learners, but due to the amendment where disabled now becomes compulsory to achieve your target, we decided let's bring Spekon into this session just to explain what they have to offer. You're more than welcome to send me an email or you can make contact with Hermias directly. Thank you. Colleagues, okay, designated groups exclude white males and foreign nationals. Please bear in mind, the amendment also makes it extremely clear that the purpose of the Employment Equity Act is not to get rid of and/or fire and/or retrench and/or whatsoever terminate your white males and/or foreign nationals. It is rather to see that should, as an example, a white male maybe leave your company through natural attrition, maybe he might retire 2 years from now, is what can you as the designated employer start to do to identify a designated person based on priorities, in other words, the highest underrepresented, related to the EAP targets. I'm going to show you a practical example in a couple of minutes before you employ and/or recruit into that particular occupational level. So as per the amendment, I did mention this, who needs to comply? All companies employing 50 or more. There was a question. Let's talk about temporary employee service and/or you might know companies, external service providers as labor brokers. Colleagues, if you employ the service, and we even took a snipping tool, you will see as per section 57 of the legislation. Should your company, being a designated employer, should you employ the services of employees by means of a labor broker and/or a TES for an indefinite period or a period of 3 months and longer. So let's assume it's a fixed term contract of 1 year. You have 100 people that you employ through the external service provider, meaning the labor broker. It is your employee for employment equity reporting purposes. There is a lot of companies, designated employers, consultants saying, but where did you hear of this? And it's not anything that there's a gray area. Section 57, for the purpose of Chapter 3 of this Act, Employment Equity, a person whose services have been procured for or provided to a client by a temporary employment service and/or a labor broker is deemed to be the employee of that client, meaning you, the designated employer, where that person's employment with the client is for an indefinite duration and/or 3 months or longer. Okay, so the Act makes it extremely clear. You need to include your temporary staff members to determine whether you are designated. And you also need to include the labor brokerage and or the temporary employee services company employees. I'm going to run through this very quick. As part of the legislation provision of unfair discrimination, no person may unfairly discriminate against the race, gender, pregnancy, sexual orientation, age, disability, HIV status. The list goes on, colleagues. Surely and hopefully by now, everyone in this session is quite aware of what is allowed and what is not allowed in terms of discrimination. Why is this extremely important for the amendment? Due to the fact that if you as the designated employer have been found guilty of discrimination against any employee in the preceding 12 months, you will be defaulted as non-compliant. You will not be able to obtain a certificate. You might be referred to the Labour Court for 1.5 million rand penalty, and you will forfeit your BEE points under management and control. So it's extremely important. How is that going to be determined? So our understanding is that the Department of Employment and Labour, colleagues, will link the CCMA court cases in terms of discrimination found guilty to the Employment Equity Online Portal. So by default, if you have been found guilty of discrimination by means of the CCMA, you will immediately basically be non-compliant. And that is for the preceding 12 months. Medical testing, I'm touching base quickly, permissible only when legislation requires it, or when it's justifiable for various reasons as per the Health, Safety and Environmental Act. HIV testing completely prohibited unless determined to be justifiable by the Labour Court. Typically, your medical industry, nurses, paramedics, surgeons, people working in the ICU could be requested to undergo regular HIV testing because a paramedic could, if carrying the virus, possibly transfer the virus to the patient, hence the reason why the employer can request a regular HIV testing. Labour inspectors, colleagues, and maybe just by a show of yes or a show of hands, maybe you can type into the chat box. The Department of Employment and Labour, how does it work? You have the department, you have the Minister of Employment and Labour. Minister Meth is the newly appointed minister. Then you have the Director General, the DG, who appoints numerous inspectors throughout the 9 provinces of South Africa. Those inspectors go out and or via email or any other virtual mechanisms, do investigations, request your appointment letter of the e-manager, your meeting minutes for the preceding 12 months, your agendas, that you meet quarterly, your analysis, your plan, etc., etc. They go through the information and then they find either non-compliant, partially compliant, or compliant. 98% of all companies that underwent an investigation last year were found either partially and or non-compliant, and only 2% were found compliant. Now, colleagues, just by a show of yes, if you undergone an inspection by the department, let's say in the preceding 12 months, you can maybe just in the chat box, we just want to get a feeling. There's 203 delegates in the session. In the preceding 24 months, have you undergone any investigation by the Department of Employment and Labour? The reason why I'm asking that, you can just say yes or no. The reason why I'm asking that, the department is extremely active when it comes to investigations at this point in time. The department did last year employ an additional 2,000 inspectors to receive training to investigate companies, not only on the employment equity legislation, but also on the amendment. The department inspector can then either give you a written undertaking to comply or compliance order. So it's a legal document requesting certain things, usually turned into a DG review, which is your highest level of investigation, and requesting that you need to come up with a new employment equity plan. And wherever you defaulted in that review, the inspector would request certain information, and review by the Director General and or the inspector employed and appointed by the Director General could request any information, colleagues, pertaining to employment equity. Do they even go as far as to do interviews with your committee members? Yes, they do. In those interviews, we have found certain questions being asked. How regular do you, as the EE representative, attend to employment equity meetings? As per the constituency, who do you represent? Do you represent a specific racial gender, or do you represent an occupational level? When you, as the EE representative, were involved in the meetings, did you discuss the employment equity plan? Were you involved in the consultation process? Colleagues, that is what we have seen in more than 140 DG reviews in the past 2.5 years. Okay, in other words, bottom line is the following: substance over legal form. It's very nice to have the attendance register, the meeting minutes. We did you a favor, and we emailed you meeting minutes for this session, which you can implement at your company as part of, let's say, a quarterly meeting for that matter, or training session. The register you can complete. All of those questions could be raised by an inspector to say, were you actively involved, or was it actually only a paper exercise? Substance, was it there? Did you meet? Did you consult? Because substance over legal form. Calling everyone in for 5 minutes saying, quickly sign this, sign that. No. Colleagues, it will be rejected in any investigation by the Department of Employment and Labour. Regarding skills development and SPECON, when you are referring to skills development, and maybe you have a skills development committee, your skills development committee and your EE committee is allowed to be the same committee. It can be the same discussion points in an EE quarterly meeting. The reason for that is that skills development is a discussion point in your EE committee meetings. Anything over and above, either skills or employment equity, is not to be discussed. If you're going to discuss turnover of the company, production, productivity, sales, budgets, and so I can go on, a toolbox talk, whatsoever the case may be, and you allow 5 minutes for employment equity, that will be rejected by the DEL. When you have a quarterly meeting, you discuss employment equity and skills development only as part of your meeting minutes. Labour courts then have the power to make appropriate orders, impose penalties payable to the National Revenue Fund, utilizing those penalties for socio-economic development upliftment, building of hospitals, schools, etc., for non-compliance with Section 16, 19, 20, and so forth. I will elaborate on all of those in a bit. Colleagues, as you can see, the current penalties remains 1.5 million rand or 2% of turnover, the greater of, if you had no previous contravention. Maybe you had an excellent financial year. You are willing to pay 1.5 million rand. Thank you very much, Bob's your uncle. No, it's not. The following year, the inspector will be back. Thank you for the 1.5 million rand penalty. One previous contravention you did not rectify, an additional 1.8 million rand or 4% of turnover. Now you paid 1.5 million. This year you paid 1.8 million. Colleagues, it does not stop there. Next year, 2.1 million or 6% of turnover. The year thereafter, 2.48%. The year thereafter, 2.7 or 10% of turnover. Okay, so please, it's imperative to ensure that you are compliant with the employment equity legislation. Let's look at the relevant sections. Section 13 of the Employment Equity Act stipulates that designated employer, in other words, employing 50 or more people, must implement affirmative action measures for designated groups. Designated groups, we know African, Indian, and colored males and females, plus white females, plus the disabled, to achieve. And remember, the disabled also includes your white male disabled being deemed designated. So if you have a white male disabled, it's part of the designated groups to achieve employment equity. And when you consult with your committee and or your union, which I will explain in a bit, you need to consult when you conduct your EAP analysis as per Section 19. I will explain in a bit. When you prepare your plan as per Section 20, which I will also explain, and when you prepare the EI2 report for submissions to the Department of Employment and Labour. Colleagues, now we're going to start with the interesting sections as per the amendment. As per the current legislation, Section 15 of the Act stipulates designated employers must implement affirmative action measures intended to ensure that suitably qualified employees from designated groups have equal opportunity and are equitably represented on all occupational levels. Occupational levels within your company could include your top management, your senior management, middle management, junior management, and then your semi-skilled and unskilled employees. In other words, as per Section 15, gone are the days where you can say, you know what, we employ 100 employees, 90 out of the 100 are from designated groups, but the majority, if not all of those designated groups are on unskilled and semi-skilled level, and the other 10 employees are on white belts or non-designated, and they are occupying the management levels. Ensure that suitably qualified employees from designated groups have equal opportunity and are equitably represented in top management, senior management, middle management, junior management, and currently speaking, you would refer to the EAP target. Going forward, once we have the regulations of the sectoral numerical targets, Section 15A will come into play. Why? Allowing the minister to identify national economic sectors, to set numerical targets for the sectors. The sectoral targets may differentiate between occupational levels, subsectors, regions, and or other relevant factors. The minister may publish a draft of any notice in the Gazette. Colleagues, in other words, we have Section 15, which currently stands and has been standing since 1998. Section 15, affirmative action. Now 15A will be gazetted, where unfortunately one person in the country, and that's the minister, will provide you with the sectoral numerical targets. Colleagues, not you, not your e-manager, not your CEO, not your e-consultant. There's a couple of e-consultants in this session. It will be provided by the minister, and you as a designated employer will need to comply with those sectors, and I will show you the draft targets that has not been gazetted as of yet, but I'll show you what something to chew on and what you can start to think of. I'll show you those numerical economic sectoral targets. By end of year 5 of your plan, you must comply with those targets or have a justifiable reason. If no justifiable reason, you are non-compliant. Okay, I will elaborate on that in a couple of minutes, colleagues. One of the major changes to Section 16 and 17. Currently, you as a designated employer, you have your EE committee, you have maybe representation on senior management, middle management, junior management, etc. In other words, the occupational level. And maybe you also have representation on each race and gender, meaning an African male, the colored male, the Indian male, and the same for females and so forth. Colleagues, one of the major changes as per Section 16 is that if you have a representative trade union, you need to consult not with your committee, but with the union representatives nominated not by you, but by the union. Do we foresee a couple of interesting scenarios here? Yes, we do. Meeting with the unions and all the representatives nominated by the unions and not by you, we're going to see the way forward in terms of the discussions, because remember now one thing, those discussions will need to include conducting your analysis, your targets, the sectoral numerical targets yet to be gazetted will be a discussion point with the unions and not with your committee. That is, if you have a representative union. What is the definition of representative union? We do not know as of yet. Hopefully, the administrative regulations that we might receive before end of this month will address that. Because you will then need to discuss not only the EAP analysis, but the employment equity plan, which will now become a 5-year plan. I will explain in more detail in a couple of minutes. You will need to discuss that with the union representatives. And when you submit and will compile your EA2 report before submission, you need to obtain approval of the union and all the representatives nominated by them. That is if you have a majority and or representative union. If not, doing that involving them, penalty 1.5 million rand. Colleagues, if you do not have a representative trade union, you will have your normal employment equity committee intact, as you hopefully do at this point in time. Also, looking at the constituency of your committee, employees or representatives nominated by them must reflect the interest of employees from all occupational levels. In other words, if you employ senior managers, you must have at least one senior manager in your committee representing senior management staff members. If you employ middle managers, you must have at least one middle manager in your committee representing the other middle managers. The same for junior management, the same for semi-skilled, and the same for unskilled. But it's on top of that, not allowed to wear two caps. You need to include employees from designated groups. In other words, if you employ African males, you need to have an additional African male representing African males in the company. Should you employ colored males, you need to have a colored male representing colored males, one Indian male representing Indian males, one white male representing white males, which will then satisfy employees from non-designated groups, of course. And then the same, one African, colored, Indian, and white female. And then, of course, an additional disabled person, should you employ the disabled, representing disabled people throughout your company in South Africa. And the consultation will include the same things pertaining to the analysis, the plan, compiling your report, etc. Colleagues, not only that, providing training to your committee, meeting on a quarterly basis, having your consultative forum agendas, meeting minutes, signed registers, etc. Again, if you do not have it in place, possible penalty. Our professional advice for now, as at the 13th of March 2025, is even if you might have a union involved regarding the amendment as of 1 January this year, please do me a favor, for now, maybe keep your employment equity committee intact as well. But you will need to then consult, starting today going forward, when you have an e-meeting, you will need to involve the unions, if you have a representative trade union, of course, and our advice, involve your committee as well. And let's await the regulations, hopefully before end of March this year, to hopefully give more information as to, well, the Act makes it clear, if you have a representative union, you consult with the union. But we prefer still involving the e-committee members for now. Disclosure of information, all relevant EE-related information to be disclosed to the stakeholders, being your CEO, your e-manager, your committee, unions, if and where applicable, when you engage in consultation.
For more information about EECMS, please feel free to visit our website at www.eecms.co.za. Thank you for attending.
Colleagues, okay, so the section 19, EAP analysis. There are two kinds of analysis. The one is the qualitative analysis. The other is the quantitative. I'm not going to elaborate too much on the qualitative. It's 23 barriers. You need to identify barriers, explain them, provide a narrative as well as mechanism on how you're going to resolve that barrier. Okay, it's a lot of consultation between you, the committee, and or the unions, if applicable. Then also the analysis must include the development of workforce profile to determine the underrepresented race and genders in the workforce. That is the quantitative analysis. How does it work? The department requests all the people in South Africa between the age of 15 and 64. Why 15? With your parental consent, you are allowed to start to work at the age of 15, 64 being the average retirement age. Let's say there are more or less 35 million people in South Africa between those two ages. That will include employed plus the unemployed. Then the department requests from Stats South Africa, please provide us with a percentage of each race and gender, and then the department requests designated employers to try your best to achieve those targets from top management to unskilled. That is as per the current legislation. Sectoral numerical targets will now be introduced, and I'm going to share the draft targets with you in a couple of minutes. But for now, let's look what you need to do as at today, since we do not have the sectoral numerical targets as of yet. I'm going to stop share. Barry will share. Barry, 5 minutes only, please. Literally just on what are the targets. We know how it's determined. How do we determine underrepresented? How do we prioritize based on the current legislation? Okay, colleagues, we are utilizing an online portal. Our clients engaging with ECMS, we not only become their consultants, ensuring EE compliance, but they also get access to the online portal that Barry will be sharing with you just now. Why? Because our clients are actively involved regarding promotions and appointments, looking at the priorities before appointing and or promoting. And if they promote and or appoint outside of priority number 1, colleagues, then you must have justifiable reason as well as evidence, corroborative evidence thereof. Barry, over to you. You can share.
Perfect. Thank you, Peter. Okay, so what you see in front of you here, this is obviously a module that we utilize so that our clients can see exactly what their priorities are on each occupational level and where the underrepresentation, etc. lies. So these targets, as Peter mentioned earlier in the meeting, have recently been updated. So as you can see here in this specific example here, these are the new national targets that we're looking at here. So African males 43.5%, colored males 4.6%, Indian males 1.7%, white males 4.1%, African females 37.5%, colored females 4.2%, Indian females 1%, and then white females 3.4%. So how this works is, so how you actually calculate where your underrepresentation, overrepresentation lies is, it takes a look at the current headcount on the occupational level, then looks at obviously the headcount per race and gender on that occupation level in comparison to the total headcount. It will then give you a target percent, well, the actual target percentage of that specific race and gender, give you the actual percentage in comparison to the target, and then it tells you if you are over or underrepresented. So if I take a look at this example here with African males, their target being 43.5%, current representation here 6.67%, being underrepresented here by 36.83%, making that race and gender priority number 1 on this occupational level. So what you'll notice here as well is we highlight the top 3 priorities. Priority number 1 being in red, priority number 2 being in orange, and 3 being in yellow. The reason why we do that is because you can then immediately see where your focus point should be, should you have an opportunity or a vacancy on an occupational level. You also notice here on the flip side, priority number 8 being your lowest priority on the occupational level. The target here for white males being 4.1% in this example, current representation sitting at 75%, being 45 of the employees out of the total of 60. So that being overrepresented here by 70.9%, hence the reason being that white males are priority number 8 on this occupational level, meaning that you need to try and rectify that overrepresentation on that specific race and gender. So what that entails there is basically based on the current headcount here, you would have to reduce your white males here by 42.5 for employees to get it back to the target percentage. So it gives you the exact data that you can actually work on based on the EAP targets and the current representation on that occupational level. And that obviously is for each occupational level that you would have to look at this from top management. And on this module here, it goes all the way down to even your temporary level as such. So obviously your priorities will differ from occupational level to occupational level. The reason being is all based on what your current representation looks like in comparison to those targets. And it'll then calculate based on your under and over representation, what your focus points should be on each occupational level. Anything else you'd like me to cover, Peter?
Barry, I'm happy with that. If the delegates, if you'd like to take a photo of this, you are more than welcome. The targets that you see in front of you are the amended targets as per more or less 2 weeks ago. Okay, it's national targets. Why are we using national targets in these reviews? We have noted that the inspectors focus on national targets. As per the amendment, you will have the opportunity, based on certain criteria, to either select national or provincial targets. But there are rules, and I'm going to discuss those rules in a couple of minutes. You are more than welcome to take a photo of these targets. What you see in front of you is fictitious information. It's for training purposes. We will, of course, never share any client's information due to confidentiality and copy and buy. Okay. Barry, thank you. I think you covered it well. Colleagues, Section 20 is one of the other major changes. Section 20 is your employment equity plan on how you will achieve reasonable progress towards transformation. Numerical goals, numerical targets. Colleagues, what would happen? One of the questions in the chat box. You currently have an employment equity plan. Let's assume your plan expires end of March. You will need to implement a new employment equity plan based on the current EAP targets that Barry showed you just now. When we have the sectoral numerical targets, as well as the regulations, the administrative regulations, colleagues, your employment equity plan will be null and void. It will be cancelled by the Minister and the Department of Employment and Labour on the 31st of August 2025. Up to that point in time, you must have an employment equity plan in place. If your plan expires end of this month, end of next month, end of June, or whatsoever the case may be, you need to implement a new employment equity plan based on the current EAP targets. However, even if you have one-year plan starting 1 July 2025, ending end of June 2026, hypothetically speaking, by the 31st of August, that plan will be cancelled. You need to retain that plan in your employment equity file for at least 5 years after expiry thereof. But you will then need, as a designated employer, in other words, all designated employers in South Africa will be a level playing field. You will need to have a 5-year employment equity plan, as far as we believe, starting 1 September 2025, with an end date of 31 August 2030, after which you must have achieved the sectoral numerical targets or have a justifiable reason, and if not, be non-compliant. That's extremely important. And it was one of the questions in the chat box. It's extremely important. Should the regulations be gazetted and the sectoral numerical targets be gazetted, we believe, of course, we cannot confirm, but out of all of the discussions with the various stakeholders, we then believe you will have a 5-year plan starting 1 September 2025. You will need to align it with the sectoral numerical targets. Year 1, 2, 3, 4, you will determine your own targets, but by end of year 5, you will need to comply with the targets set by the Minister. I will show you an example of the draft sectoral numerical targets. Okay, someone also asked the calculation. The calculation we have been working on for weeks and weeks and weeks. It's quite a big calculation. The reason for that, once you have the sectoral targets, you need to align the EAP targets with the sectoral targets to determine the adjusted target for each race and gender in each occupational level between national and or provincial per sector, the 18 sectors. So there's 1,512 variables to consider. Section 21, your submissions. We believe the EA2 report will be amended. In other words, when you submit your relevant reports, anything from 1 September this year and 15th of January next year, we believe the EA2 report will be amended. 22, it's only for listed entities, companies on the JSE. Will need to show your workforce profile and your disabled workforce in your annual financial report. Successive E-plan, before the expiry of your current plan, you need to start and prepare a new plan. As mentioned, if your plan expires 31 March this year, 1 April, you need to have a new employment equity plan. We all are quite aware of Section 24 EE manager. You need to have an employment equity manager facilitating your e-compliance process, must be a full-time person within the company, must have relevant budgets to ensure e-compliance, must have KPIs and KPIs, key performance areas and indicators on whether the person is fulfilling his or her duties regarding employment equity compliance. Duty to inform, colleagues, you will know by now the A1 posters on the summary of the Employment Equity Act, as well as its basic conditions, must be in your office and or at your premises where all employees can view those posters. Duty to keep records for a period of 5 years. Please retain the records of all of your proceedings pertaining to employment equity. Section 27, National Minimum Wage, I did mention initially, will now be introduced. You will need to ensure that you are paying minimum wage or more than national minimum wage, or you might be defaulted as non-compliant. 36, Labour Inspector must request and undertake a written undertaking to comply with Section 20 of the plan. Colleagues, the inspector, if the inspector has reasonable grounds to believe that you have failed to comply with your employment equity plan, you could receive a non-conformancy and be non-compliant, won't receive a certificate of compliancy. Section 37 is now amended to permit the Minister to prescribe by regulation the manner of service of compliance orders. Currently, the department are servicing those compliance orders by means of emails, but the Minister can prescribe whether it's hand-delivered or registered post or via email or through a Teams session, etc. The Minister can prescribe the service of compliance orders. 42. Whether the designated employee is in compliance with the Act, the DG or any person, inspector or body applying the Act must take into account whether the employer has complied with the sectoral numerical targets as per 15A. When will we receive 15A, the sectoral numerical targets? Hopefully before end of April this year. DG review. If you are being investigated by the Department of Employment and Labour, please comply with the recommendations. If not, a referral to the Labour Court. Section 53, colleague, state contracts will only be allocated to companies being in compliance with employment equity. Okay, so if you deal with government, municipalities, the state as defined through the Public Finance Management Act, provincial legislations, etc. If those employers or government, state-owned entities equals your client, you will need to ensure that you are compliant, because if not, government will not be allowed to deal with and or pay your invoice at all. So let's look at the third bullet, a new section 53.6, and clarify the Minister of Employment and Labour may only issue a certificate to an employer if the Minister is satisfied that. So for designated employers 50 or more, you need to comply with all three of those bullets. Comply with the sectoral numerical targets, which we are awaiting, or raise reasonable grounds for non-compliance, justifiable reasons. You need to comply with the targets. And you need to show that you have submitted your most recent EA2 and 4 reports to the Department of Employment and Labour, and that you have not been found guilty of discrimination in the preceding 12 months, and that you have not paid wages below the minimum wage. Colleagues, if you employ 50 or more people and you are deemed as an employer and you do not comply with any one of those three bullets, you will be non-compliant. Whereas companies employing less than 50 people, if you deal with government and or if you request a BEE certificate every year to obtain your BEE points, but now you employ below 50, so you're non-designated, you only need to comply with the last bullet. You will need to indicate that you have not been found guilty of discrimination in the preceding 12 months and that you are paying minimum wage or more. Bob's your uncle, those two questions you will answer, we believe, through the online portal of the department. You will receive your certificate then every year by answering only those two questions. Okay, Do we foresee a couple of funny things that might arise out of this? Yeah, we do, because I mean, companies employing less than 50 people, it's answering 2 quick questions. Thank you, there's your compliance certificate. Whereas companies employing 50 or more will need to comply with the committee, targets, EAP analysis, sectoral targets in your employment equity plan, submissions, paying minimum wage, not being found guilty, etc., etc., etc. It's quite an onerous process for designated employers to comply and remain compliant. Colleagues, I'm almost done, then I'm going to show you a couple of the targets that we prepared for this session. The stance as of today, there are no sectoral targets as of yet. There are no regulations as of yet. Admin regulations explaining the forms and the interpretation of the amendment, hopefully before 31 March 2025. Sectoral numerical target regulations explaining and providing you with the sectoral targets, hopefully by 30th of April 2025. Employers deemed designated cannot implement an EAP analysis or an employment equity plan on the sectoral targets because there are none as of yet. As I've mentioned, if your plan expires, please consult, implement, monitor your new employment equity plan. Targets based on EAP for now. Same for a DG review. If you undergo a DG review and the department says, please come up with a new employment equity plan, you will utilize the EAP targets for now. Colleagues, employers deemed non-designated employers due to the repeal of the annual turnover threshold cannot deregister at this point in time. I'm going to give you an example. We used to have a couple of filling stations on our databases clients. Average filling station, if it's, let's say, small/medium enterprise, employed maybe 30 people, it's forecourt attendants and maybe a couple of cashiers, maybe a supervisor or 2, and maybe a manager, and then the owner. You employ, let's say, 30 people. You are definitely not in need of a BEE certificate. And maybe you do not deal with government. Government does not stop there and ask you, I want to put in fuel, but show me your EE certificate. Those kind of clients can deregister, but not as of yet, because we are awaiting the regulations to elaborate on how to deregister. Currently, it's by completing the EA14. At this point in time, the department is not accepting any deregistrations up until the point where the regulations are gazetted. But then also employers deemed non-designated employers due to the repeal of annual turnover thresholds. If you need a BE certificate and or you deal with government, you at this point in time cannot apply for a 16B certificate. Answering, we're paying minimum wage, we have not been found guilty of discrimination. I want my certificate. Colleagues, unfortunately at this point in time, you cannot apply for that as of yet. We hope that once we have the final regulations, both sets, starting 1 May, we hope that the department will open the online portal. The online portal will distinguish between designated employers employing 50 or more people and employers employing less than 50 people. We understand that the department will send you an email to say you employ less than 50, answer the following 2 questions, and then the thinking there is that you will receive your compliance certificate immediately through the DEL. Can the DL investigate your company to ensure you employ less than 50? Yes, definitely. Will they do it? Yes, I believe they will. I believe they will. Are companies splitting to become below the 50? I believe there are companies doing that. Will they be caught out by the department? Probably, because as per Section 61 of the Act, you are not allowed to circumvent the Act at any point in time by means of splitting your company. You cannot say we are retrenching or firing or getting rid of staff members because we employ 70 people, we want 40, we're going to retrench 30 for employment equity, we are non-compliant, non-designated. Colleagues, be very wary of what you do and or what you implement, because it could possibly be seen as a fraudulent activity dependent on the inspector that could investigate any such company. Okay, I'm not referring to any of the delegates here. I'm thinking outside of the box. I'm talking hypothetically, and I'm talking out of experience as to what we have seen in the past couple of months and or years. Remember, these regulations have been coming since 2017, colleagues, 8 years later, and the department wants to implement it now. Okay, so it's not something new. It's been there for many, many, many years.
For more information about EECMS, please feel free to visit our website at www.eecms.co.za. Thank you for attending.
Okay, so as Barry did show, our clients utilize an online portal. Of course, that is something that will be amended pertaining to once we have the draft regulations. Now, and the sectoral numerical targets, of course, but I'm going to show this you nevertheless. But please bear in mind, this has not been gazetted as of yet, but you can start to think of what is our way forward. Now, what a lot of companies, people, consultants, and especially consultants in this session, please bear in mind the following. Everyone sees the draft targets. I'm talking about sectoral targets, draft, and you think, okay, what industry are we in? What are we going to use, national, provincial? Let's quickly select A, B, and C. Bob's your uncle, these are the targets. Colleagues, it's not as easy as that. First of all, okay, normal company info. But you need to determine the sector that you operate in. Now, there's a couple of questions, and this we are using to implement it in the online portal, colleagues, so that it doesn't look as extensive and or as difficult or unuser-friendly, so that companies will be able to select throughout our consultation a couple of things, and then you have your target. That's the main thing, because let's be honest, what do you want? You want your target at the end of the day, and that's that. I'm referring to the end of the 5-year target. So let's chat about this. The sector you need to determine before you can look at any target. Look at your sector. The question is, do you operate in one sector? If the answer is yes, then your final conclusion is you don't need to answer the next question. What sector do you operate in? And you will select your sector. And let's say we are saying agri. That is our sector. You don't need to answer. You only operate in one sector. Okay. But what if you operate in two sectors? You have an agri division and you have a retail division. On agri, you produce certain things, but you have a retail division selling whatsoever you are producing. Now you're in two sectors. Colleagues, do you operate in more than one sector? If so, complete the following below. I'm going to say we operate in agri, and I'm going to say in my example, we operate in retail. Wholesale and retail, so we sell. But then, as per the draft regulation, we are waiting the final regulation, colleagues. As per the draft, it stipulates you will then need to select the sector where the majority of your employees are. So let's say we operate in agri, we have 104 people producing whatsoever product we have. But now you see there's agri. That's your final conclusion. But we also operate in wholesale, and there we have 200 sales reps. I'm selecting 200. Colleagues, can you see it defaults then to wholesale? And that will then be the sector that you will need to utilize the targets when we have it from the minister. I can add whatsoever. Of course, there's a lot of calculations and algorithms behind this. If I select another transport and we maybe have more in transport, then you will utilize transport. The main thing is where the majority of your employees are employed. Okay. Because remember, for each of these 18 sectors. They all have different sectoral targets in draft. And I believe the final gazette, they will all have different targets. Okay. Now we have established, I want to, let's say agriculture, I'm going to say we employ 32,598, defaults to agricultural industry. Okay, now that we have that sector, we have the sector, then you need to determine the target. Okay, I just quickly want to check there, EAP target. Okay, what I'm going to do, whilst we are on sector, colleagues, you can grab your phone. I'm going to click on sector. There are the sectoral targets in draft format. It's not been gazetted. When you look at this, you are more than welcome to take a photo of this. This is just for training purposes. If it changes, I doubt that it will change substantially. Agri 13.2 might change to maybe 13.5 or 13.1. I doubt it's going to change drastically. You are welcome to take a photo of this. Your next question, you have identified the sector, agri. Now you need to identify the target, EAP target, because colleagues, you need to align the EAP target to the sectoral target. If you think, and a lot of companies think this, and maybe consultants involved here, we sat with the commissioner amongst others, we went through this in detail. You don't just take the sectoral target, because the sectoral target in draft format does not distinguish between the races being African, Indian, colored, and white. When you include the EAP, you adjust the EAP into the sectoral target, you exclude foreign nationals and white males. It was one of the questions in the chat box when we all had a human break. And I quickly went through it. You exclude the EAP target for white males and foreign nationals. By the way, foreign nationals, the target there equals 0% anyhow. So by default, it is excluded, but you specifically exclude white males when aligning EAP targets into sectoral targets. But let's quickly have a squeeze at this. If you look at the sectoral target, 13.2 in agri for African males. We look at the EAP target. Before you can select the EAP target as per the draft regulations, and yes, colleagues, I did have a discussion with the consultant yesterday. There are draft regulations. As we are sitting here today, it was gazetted 1 February 2024. There are draft regulations. It's not explanatory or it doesn't elaborate on a lot of things, but it is there. And what will you need to look after or at? You have the sector, agri. We are happy. We can confirm that. But looking at EAP targets, questions to determine the target. As a national employer, do you conduct business nationally? If your answer is yes, final conclusion, you must utilize national EAP targets. If you say we do not operate nationally, we say no. Please answer the next question. As a national employer, do you conduct business in one province only? If you say yes, the respective provincial target for that one province shall apply. Colleagues, it's not me saying this. This is out of the draft regulations. Could it change? Yes, there is a possibility that it might change. If so, we will update our records. We will update our online portal because our clients need to be updated to the latest targets and legislation. But for now, the question, you operate nationally, you use national targets. You operate in one province, you use one province. As a national employer, do you conduct business in more than one province? The answer would only be yes if you go to that. And then, if you operate business in more than one province, but not all 9 provinces, then you can select the national or provincial target, where the majority of your employees must be selected. So I'm going back to my sector. And we know the majority of employees are in agri. We can all agree on this. There's the majority of our employees. So going back to the EAP target, national, we are allowed to choose national if we operate in 2 or 3 provinces, or if we want provincial, then we will need to utilize agri. Colleagues, this template, when I click on EAP targets, boom, I'm going to scroll down a little bit. You are more than welcome to take a photo. Just quickly one. You can take a photo. You have seen the national targets. Barry did elaborate on that, but they are all the latest provincial targets of 2 weeks ago. Colleagues, once you have identified your sector, once you have identified the EAP target you are utilizing, only then you can start to consult based on the relevant targets. So what we have done here, you can see just by looking at those targets, those are the sectoral targets, and those are the EAP targets. Just by clicking on whatsoever industry you operate in, do you see the targets are changing? Whatsoever industry I select on, it defaults to that industry targets in draft. The EAP targets, which is here at the bottom of this sectoral targets, once you know whether you're going to, let's say, work on national, if you select national, there are the targets. If you're going to say, but we operate maybe in Free State, there are the Free State EAP targets. Why is this important? Because that needs to be adjusted to those sectoral targets to determine your adjusted targets. I want to show you an example. If we go, let's say, back to agri, because this is just for training purposes, colleagues. We are not showing the entire template that we created. It's for training purposes. We said agri, and let's say we say Western Cape. There is the sector target. We discussed this earlier, 13.2. You need to adjust the EAP target of Western Cape to that sectoral target, and your final target, not showing here at the moment, but your final target there will be 6.14%, meaning 6.14% will be your target for the end of 5 years for top management, African male, agricultural, Western Cape. What do? You take your actual head count and you say, we employ currently 100 people. The target equals 6.14. In other words, the end of the 5 years, your target equals 6 employees, rounded down. What are you going to do about the other 94 employees? You need to distribute them to the other targets, meaning colored and Indian male, African colored Indian white female. So out of that 100, depending on what the target there would be, we might possibly say we're going to in year 1 minus 10 people here, but we might add an additional plus 3 colored males. We might add 2 Indian males. We might add 6 African females, whatsoever the case may be, colleagues. And that is where you and your committee and or the union, where applicable, will need to consult with one another to say, how are we going to get to that? That is the target prescribed by the minister to achieve by end of August 2030. And then what we are currently doing here, we added the employment equity plan, which is printable, but we're not going to elaborate on this. Colleagues, this is for training purposes to show you whatsoever. It's imperative to first understand what is my sector. After you establish that, what is my EAP I'm going to use? And only then you can say, let's start to consult based on what we see here, what we see there, to align with what we have here, because that is your 5-year target to be achieved by end of August. Colleagues, we have seen lots of companies undergoing monitoring reviews. You implemented an employment equity plan, you submitted your EA2 and your plan, maybe through an interview, and now the department's starting to do monitoring reviews. They started with this February last year. They upped their game this year. We get about 3 on a weekly basis, asking, you anticipated this in your plan, you submitted something different in your EA2. Why are you deviating from your employment equity plan? Colleagues, company information, we complete that. Discrepancies, you say, we anticipated in our plan, hypothetically speaking, an African male on top, senior, semi, etc., etc. Do you see now, you see where you did not achieve it between your plan and what you actually submitted. If you didn't achieve that, you're not achieved. And now the question is, what are your justifiable reasons? And that is where you go to this document. It red flags where you didn't achieve. Colleagues, there what you see in front of you are the justifiable reasons. And whatsoever I click on there, if I say, let's say as an example, some of the first one, and I say insufficient recruitment opportunities, what is the narrative, the explanation? And I'm going to say we ran recruitment campaigns. Colleagues, what evidence do you have as to why you didn't achieve it? You ran a recruitment campaign as per your justifiable reason of insufficient recruitment opportunities. What is your evidence? We're going to say spreadsheets or database extracts. It's there. What is our evidence? In this case, not applicable, but do we have our evidence? We say, yes, we do. And then I just quickly want to run the macros here. And when I run that, I go to the report. All of the details are there to show the inspector where you didn't achieve. And of course, what are your justifiable reasons? Okay, you can see the first one I've amended there. It pulls through for each occupational level as per requested by the inspector. Colleagues, this is what we do for our clients. It's our responsibility as ECMS to ensure that our clients are not being referred to the Labour Court. That is what we do. And we have 100% success rate for the past 16 years. And we hope to keep it that way. Colleagues, before I'm going to open Q&A, I just quickly want to show you something. This is our 2 minutes of a sales pitch. That's not the purpose of this session. Give me 2 minutes, please. And we're going to open then for questions and answers. What you see in front of you, colleagues, of course, our website. Colleagues, all of this has been amended. If you don't know whether you need to comply or not, you can literally click onto who needs to comply. By answering these questions, our website will guide you as to what to do. If you say, no, we don't have more than 50, do you employ less than 50, provide services to government? Yes, maybe we do. It will show you exactly what to do and or what your forte is for going forward. Why need to comply requirements, etc. We did add something on the confirmatory notices because we did realize that the confirmatory notices are being, well, the department is on a huge drive regarding confirmatory notices. So I'm sure there's a couple of companies in this session that will say we are 100% with you, ECMS. We also received confirmatory notice. Our services, the costing thereof, you don't need to liaise with us and ask everything. It immediately tells you there what the cost is for companies employing 50 to 100 employees. If you collapse that, 101 to 500 employees, that's your monthly retainer. Colleagues, that's a monthly retainer. There's a once off to buy the license, get the setup, hand over. Then as from there, that is your monthly retainer for our clients that you see in front of you. What does that entail? Only an online portal? No, definitely not. When you scroll to the bottom, you can click on our scope of work. Of course, should you like to engage with ECMS colleagues, you pop me an email and we will provide you with a formal quote and a formal service level agreement, and we will attach the scope of work. Scope of work, as I've mentioned before, we facilitate the quarterly meetings. We draft the analysis for you. We draft the plan for you. We need your intervention, of course, but we don't tell you what to do. We don't tell you how to do it. We do it for you. We do everything for you. We draft your EE meeting minutes. We draft your agenda. We provide you with the register that your committee and your union just needs to complete. We draft your EA2 document, your EA4 document. We even submit the EA2 and 4 documents for our clients on your behalf. Got it? We do everything. We don't tell you how to do it. We don't tell you what to do. We do it for you. And that is as per the costing mechanism you see there. WhatsApp forum. We started this quite recently. We're building quite substantially on this. If you'd like, you can be informed, collaborate. It's an open, interactive discussion. The costing is there, but the membership benefits are also included there. How do you enroll in this? As easy as to click on WhatsApp forum. You scroll down, you complete your company information, you select the payment option, we add you to the group, and we take it from there.
For more information about EECMS, please feel free to visit our website at www.eecms.co.za. Thank you for attending.